Well, welcome back, everyone, to Digital Hammurabi. I'm Dr. Josh, and we are into Lesson 18 of Learn to Read Biblical Hebrew. So if you're just joining us in the series, in the description should be a link where you can click and go back to start at the very beginning. If you're here because you already know Biblical Hebrew, maybe you're in seminary or in grad school and you've got a semester or two under your belt and you just want to get some exposure to reading through the biblical text, we'll be doing that as well. We're in 1 Kings chapter 1. But today we are going to be learning about the Hiphil verbs, and so that'll be fun. Last week we learned about the PL. If you remember, we are going through Chun Leong Seao's grammar. I think we're in lesson 16. The link to the book is also in the description below. But let's go ahead and get started. If you have questions or comments, please put them in the side chat, and I will do my best to get to them and answer them as we go through. And if you're watching this after the live stream and you do have questions, please comment. You can ask them there, or of course email us at digitalhammurabi@gmail.com. So yeah, let's get started. Okay. So the Hiphil verbs, if you remember last week, we talked about the PL. And if you think about the PL stem, there are lots of different ways that a PL verb can, the nuance that a PL verb can have. So it can be factative, it can be denominative. The one that we tend to think about sort of from a pedagogical or heuristic standpoint is the intensive, just because that one's easier, maybe easier to wrap your head around. So the word shavar in the cow means to break, but shiber in the PL means to shatter, to smash, so to like break intensely. So that's one of the ways that we think about it. Of course, you don't want to get locked into that in your mind. You want to think, there are different ways that a PL, the different nuances that a PL can have. And the same is true with the Hiphil. Again, we call it the Hiphil because it's built on the root pa'al, pei, ayin, lamed, to do, to work. So Hiphil, that's where this comes from, in the same way we saw last week. Oops. I'll just do it all right. It's fine. PL. So it's based on pei, ayin, lamed. Same thing here. And as we'll see later on, we have the nifal. It's the same root, but if you put nifal, and so on. Okay, so today we're dealing with the Hiphil and causative. That's the, if you think about Hiphil, think causative, okay? Now, a lot of you, old school or old timer grammarians out there, Hebrew linguists, whoa, it's not always causative. Of course it's not. But in the same way that you think cal is simple and PL is intensive and nifal is passive, Hiphil is causative, right? Hitpael is reflexive. These are just sort of pedagogical things, sort of, to help you remember and separate things. So most of the time, a Hiphil verb is going to be causative. So what does causative mean? Oh, goodness. The root, the root mem lamed kaf. Of course, we recognize that melech, right, to be king, or a king. If we said him lich, that's supposed to be a yud in there. If we said him lich, that would be he caused him to reign, to be king, right? So it's making, something do something else. That's sort of a base way of thinking about it. Yeah, cadaver splatter. Yes, this is much more clinical. Maybe it's a matter of valency or participants. Yes, this is a beginner class, and I think cadaver knows that. He's just um, so yeah. You have participants that are in the sentence, or in the verbal idea. So if you increase the valency by one, but like that's if you're here learning biblical Hebrew, that's a little too much. So just think, no. He says sorry. No, that's absolutely right. Um, and when you get into you finish your first year of Hebrew, maybe in seminary, get into your second year, you're going to start to use grammars like Waldkin O'Connor or Gesenius, and they're going to go into more of the details about this sort of thing. And it's absolutely true. So you can have transitive verbs that are put into the Hiphil, which are sort of your standard causatives. You can have intransitives, and we'll talk about that for just a second. So causative is the main one that I want you to remember, but you can also have a factative. So again, taking like a stative or an intransitive state to be good, to be big, to be wide, and then you put it in the Hiphil. It's to make wide, to make big. It's not so much to cause someone else to be big. In that standard causative sense, they call it a factative. You can also have a denominative, also a declarative. If you remember from last week, all of those things are true of the PL. So there's a lot of overlap between the PL and the Hiphil. But the main thing to remember is that very, very frequently, most generally, if you see a verb in the Hiphil, the nuance is going to be causative or increasing the valency. So just think causative when you think Hiphil, and you'll be good for now. Okay, so like we did last week, and probably 2 weeks prior, oftentimes you'll have a root. Hebrew is built on generally 3 letter roots. So mem, lamed, kaf here. That you'll have roots that are weak, that will have weak letters. So Sayal goes through these. The root amad. I'm going to come back for a second. You remember Ahmad Rashad standing in the end zone? Ahmad Rashad, he's standing in the end zone, ready to catch that pass. So when you have Ahmad, you have to stand. Yes. So Ahmad means to stand. I don't know. I always found those little things helpful when I was in introductory Hebrew. So it's very useful. So Ahmad means to stand. So if you have, actually, I'll put that in a different color. If you have your Hiphil form, what you might expect, Hamid, maybe. But because of this ayin, which again, this should not be surprising to you if you've been with us for a while. Interesting things happen with the vowels when you have an ayin or a guttural letter. So what happens instead is you get this composite shava, and then the echo vowel, the segol here echoes back. So he'amid. So, you know what? I didn't do the paradigm, did I? Let me do that real quick. Okay, so I know we do this each week, but I think it's good. So I'll just go through here. In the cow, in the perfect, shamarti, shamarta, shamart. And guys, if I mess up any of the vowels, I apologize. Doing this from memory. So shamarti, shamarta, shamart, shamar, Shamara, Shamarnu, Shamartem, Shamarten. Ugh, that's an ugly sigil. Shamaru, and well, let me do it. Shamaru. So this is the cow perfect paradigm. Remember, the things that you want to key in on are these endings. There's no ending here. Nu, tem, ten, oo. All right, those are the endings you want to key in on. So because the perfect puts endings on. So shamarti, shamarta, shamart, shamar, shamara, shamarnu, shamartem, shamarten, shamaru, shamaru. Okay. So keeping that in mind, I think he uses katal. Let me just check so I stay consistent. Yeah. Okay. So in the Hiphil, oops. Yeah, that's fine. Hiktalti. Hiktalta. Oops. Hiktalt. Then your standard hiktil. Then slightly different. Kind of bunching it up here. Let me see if I can come down a little more. Hiktila. Notice it's not hiktila. Hiktila. Hiktalnu. Hiktal. Tem. Hiktal. Ten. And then I'm just going to write it once here since it's the same. Hiktilu. And then again, Hiktilu. And the accent stays back here. So, Hiktalti, Hiktalta. So let me just Hiktalti, Hiktalta, Hiktalt, Hiktil, Hiktila. Again, the accent's here as opposed to Shamara. And instead of this being Hiktila, it's Hiktila. Hiktalnu, Hiktaltem, Hiktalten, Hiktilu, Hiktilu. So, again, the endings T, Ta, T, nothing. Nu, tem, ten, oo. Same right across the board. So, excuse me. I'm sorry. I feel like I had a little tickle in my throat. In these days of Corona, it's a scary thing to have. So this is the basic paradigm. So that means that in the same way with the cal and with the PL that we've seen, if there are certain, first gutturals or second vobs or third haze, if the roots have these weak or guttural letters, there are going to be certain vocalic changes that take place. So let's just take a look at some of them. We just looked at one. So again, Ahmad, instead of it being hit mead, you get het and mead, which the paradigm will look like. See if I can just do this from. I won't do the whole thing, but Ahmadti. It's a mouthful. Ahmadta. and so on. But then if you go down to the third, Amid, Amida, and so on. So it's the same, the same endings, the same, really everything past the first consonant here is going to be the first, the letter of the root. Everything's the same after that. Hiktalti, iktalta, iktalt, but it's this for the guttural. So first gutturals look like that. Third gutturals, we'll just do this very briefly. So if you have shalach, so guttural letter here. Instead of it being hish lich, God, let me just, instead of it being hish lich, because you have this guttural letter and it wants to have some sort of pronunciation, you get your furtive patach, so hishliach, hishliach. So hishlachti, hishlachta, hishlacht, right? Hishliach, hishlicha, and so on. But it's just that furtive patach here to give this guttural letter a little bit of a pronunciation. He talks about third alepphs, which do the quiescent thing. I won't go through that again because it's exactly the same. You'll just get, the aleph, and then aspirantization here, no vowel underneath of this. This becomes a long vowel and it quiesces, just like the other ones that we saw. We talk about that, I think, 2 videos ago. And in the last video, we talk about this. You can go back and review that if you want, just because I'm looking at the time. Third haze, we want to talk about very briefly. Again, it's the same sort of thing. The third hay, if you remember, so gala in the cow, what ends up happening is this third hay acts like, essentially turns into a yud for a lot of the paradigm. So you get galiti, galita. That's Josh. Come on. Galita, galit, gala. So I should do that. So the third be gala. And then, like we saw in the construct form, oftentimes to accommodate an ending, that third hay will get strengthened and put a little foot on it. Right? Galata, it'll go to a tav here. Galata. Okay, so again, we talked about this in the past couple of videos with the cow and the PL. The same thing happens with the Hiphil. So if we have you can have higliti or you can have higleti. You see both. But higliti, higlita, higlit, and so on. So no real surprises there. First nuns. We should talk about first nuns because here in let me just look. Sorry. Would you say that the aleph in the second or third position is just a vowel marker? Yeah, that's a good question. It seems like it's quiescing, so it's just going away. Oh, you mean in a position where it's so just so everybody knows what Cadaver Splatter's asking is glottal stops, the aleph, if you were to write, say the words, uh-oh, uh-oh, this sound right here, when you start the O, you don't say, oh, right? You go, and then you can feel it in the back of your throat. You constrict your throat before you start the O sound. So that glottal stop, aleph represents that glottal stop. So the question is, when you see this, does it indicate that? I don't know. It's been a while since I've thought through and read up on this sort of thing. It's a good question. But again, it does seem like, particularly in the third position, it quiesces, so it just goes away. But that's a good question. And probably a not so satisfactory answer. But for everybody just learning the grammar right now, that's not, you don't need to know that. So don't worry. First nuns. So nagad. If you remember nun, where have we seen this before? Think, Josh, think. Well, I can't remember. I don't remember if I've looked into this to verify that this is actually the case. But I've heard somewhere that, and it was probably in class as an example of this. So even if it's not true, that this is where it comes from, it works out really well for us. So in legal, would be like not legal, but the N assimilates into the L, and what you end up with is a doubling of the L, illegal. And that's what's happening with first nuns. So like nagad. So when you put the hey in the front, you would expect something like hingid, but that nun wants to assimilate into the gimel and double it, just like within legal. So what you end up with is higid. That's a really weird looking dagish here, but the nun is assimilating into the gimel. So if we did our cool little magnifying glass, right, and you looked at this little dot, what you'd see actually is a little nun that's all scrunched up in here because it's assimilating into the gimel. So the paradigm would look like this. And again, I won't do the whole thing, but just so you can get it. Higadti. Gadta. So on. You get down to the third masculine singular, you get higid, higida, and so on. But it's this nun assimilating. So you notice you don't see the nun sitting up here from nagad. It's assimilated here. So that's something that you got to pay attention to. First nuns will often assimilate like that. Okay, another fun one in the Hiphil is a first yud. So the verb yashav. If yashav somebody, they sit down, right? If you shav them, they're gonna go back and they're gonna sit down. That's what happens when you shav somebody. One of the things that was interesting to me when I started to study Arabic was that often words that are first yuds in Hebrew are actually first like wows, the W sound, in Arabic. So weled. What's another one? Sorry, I'm trying to. So if you have yeled, in Hebrew, weled. So alaweled, what, Yamshi or something. Anyway, but that, I don't know why I just drew that out, because I can't imagine. I don't know how many people are watching that know Arabic. But anyway, not that I know Arabic well at all. But Yashav. So what happens is this first Yud goes back to an original first Vav or Wow. So you'll see this Yud is, it'll essentially extend down into a Vav. So instead of something like, Hishavti, what you will get is Hushavti. For those of you that are interested, Sayal talks about this a little bit. And what he points out is that even though should I talk about? No, I shouldn't talk about this. Let's keep it simple. So Hoshavti, that's the big thing, is this Holam Vav up here should key you in. This is a Hiphil form. And that's a first Yud. So Hoshavti, Hoshavta, Hoshavt, Hoshiv. I mean, all the rest of it's pretty Hoshiva, Hoshavnu, but again, it's this Holam Vav here in the front. Keys you in. Hey, this is a hip. I mean, the hey does it too, but this indicates this is a Hiphil, and it is a first Yud. Should be like a clue. Okay, we can talk about. Oh man, we got a couple more. Which ones are? I'm looking at the time. Okay. And actually, what I should point out here is he's actually categorizing. Sorry, I should have been clear on this. He's categorizing a word like yashav that goes back to an original vav. He's calling these first vavs. That's not very clear, is it? So there are actual first yuds that were not originally first vavs. So Yatav is the example that he gives. To be good, you might expect now to see Hotav T, but this is like actually an original first Yud. It wasn't a first Vav. So this one you do get I think Hetavti is the form. Let me just look. Yeah, Hetavti, Hetavta, Hetaft, Hetiv, Hetiva, Hetiv or Hetev. Yeah, Hetiv, and so on. So the Yud stays here because it was ostensibly an original first Yud and not a first Vav. Right. I'll show you one more really quick, and that is the second Vav. So kum, for example. This one's just weird. I won't go into the reasons that it forms this way. But it's just strange. Now it's so strange that it's one of these things that when you see it, you'll go, oh, okay. Well, this must be the Middle Weeks. Hakimoti. So Hakimoti, and it goes regular from there. I mean, not regular, but you can anticipated from there. Hakimota. Kimot. And then it's Hakim and Hakima. This is one that I wouldn't necessarily, say you have to recommend. I wouldn't necessarily say you have to go memorize this. Sorry. But perhaps just sort of recognize if you have this weird oti, ota, ot ending that maybe you're looking at. And of course, the hey up front will tell you or give you a little bit more of a clue. This is a middle week. I guess one thing to think is that the middle vav is flipping to the outside. Maybe that's a way to think about it. It's sliding out here. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of a way that you can remember that. Okay, but this is middle weeks. One more thing before we go to our reading is the participial form. So if you remember, just to quickly review, let's just use this. Dover for the cow. You have dover, doveret. I don't know why I didn't pick one that would work. Shomer, shomeret. Dovrim. Dovrot. Right? This is the participle, active participle in the cow. So shomer, shomeret, shomerim, shomerot. In the PL, we have this mem shava up front. And that clues us in. This is a PL participle. I was going to draw that in a different color, but that's okay. Medaber. Medaberet. Medabrim. And medabrot. But it's this mem shava. This tells you this is a PL, active participle. Well, the Hiphil, instead of it being mem shava, I don't know why I did this way, but instead of it being a mem shava, it's a mem pathak or patach. Why am I erasing like this? This is like the most inefficient way to do this. So you get maktil. Oops. Maktil. Yes. Sorry. Maktelet. Maktilim. Maktilot. But it's, instead of it being mem shava here, it's mem pathak. And of course, you see the hierik yod in here as well. But these are Hiphil, active participles. So, yeah, that's the last thing he covers. Okay. Whew. That went reasonably well. There's your grammar. Okay, so we are now turning to the actual reading of the Hebrew text. Again, if you have questions, I see. Sorry, I just kind of glanced over. I think Cadaver Spider is asking questions. Probably we should be. We should probably talk about them on the side, just because these are maybe a little more advanced for what we're doing right now. But they're good questions or statements. That actually wasn't a question, was it? Okay. So let's move into our reading. We have been in First Kings, so Melachim Aleph, and we are down near the end. If you remember in the story, David has become very old, and we're in chapter 1, by the way. David's become very old, and there's been Adonijah's taken it upon himself to make himself king, and Bathsheba has been promised in the story that Solomon is going to sit on the throne. And so they set this whole plan in motion, she and Nathan. And anyway, so now we've come to the part where David has pronounced that Solomon is going to sit on the throne, and word has gotten back to Adonijah and his crew, who have been, have been partying it up, living it up, partying. And so now it's been told to them, David has actually anointed or had Solomon anointed as king. And ooh, it's bad. So we're picking up in verse 49. Hopefully we'll finish up the chapter today, maybe get into chapter 2. Okay, so let's read. Vayacherdu vayakumu kol ha-kruim asher la-Adoniyahu vayelchu ish ledarko. So here we have a vav, a kal, vav consecutive, imperfect from chet resh dalet. So this is to tremble. Charad is to tremble. So, and they trembled. Notice the because of this chet up here, vowel pattern. So, and they trembled, right? Or, they were afraid is the idea here. They, trembled. And they got up, they arose. So here, this is another kal, vav consecutive and perfect. Third plural from kum. So kof vav mem. So a middle week. Here's your, if you remember when you have it in the vav consecutive imperfect, that long shorek gets kind of sucked down into a short vowel. Vayakumu. And they got up. Who did? Kol hakruim. So kara means to call. This is a passive participle, a kal passive participle. So this is, so we can draw this one out. Kara means to call. Karu, this au pattern is your passive participle. Here with the ending, and because of the accent shift, this has gone to a vocal shava, and of course you have your definite article put on. So hakruim, this is your form, hakruim, the called ones. And of course, we just refer to these as the invited ones, the guests. That's how they translate that usually. So, and they were afraid. So the guests were afraid. Oh, well, maybe this is just everybody. Think about it, but probably here, looking at the syntax, I suspect this is referring to the guests. So, and the guests were afraid, and all the guests were afraid, and they got up. Sorry, the guests who were Adonijah's, to Adonijah. So all of Adonijah's guests were afraid, and they got up, and they went, vayelchu. So this is from halach. Notice the hey acting like a first yud, and so just another kal, vav consecutive and perfect. Third plural. So that's where the sere is coming from. Halach, to go, and they went ish ledarko. So if you remember, derech is a segelet, and you remember that segelets in certain cases will return to their one syllable base. Sometimes it's a hirik, Sometimes it's a pathak, a patach. So here with derech, it's dark. So darko, his way, is that form. And of course, you don't have lamed patach here because you only have one marker of definiteness on a noun. So here, the object suffix is making this definite, his way. This ish, remember ish, means man, person, but oftentimes when it's used, it will be used in a distributive sense. So each man. So all of the guests were afraid. They got up, all of Adonijah's guests, sorry, and they went, each man to his way. In other words, like went on his way. Each man went on his way. So they dispersed is the idea here. Va'adoniyahu yarei mipnei Shlomo vayakom vayelech vayachazek bekarnot hamizbeach. So, and Adonijah, here's a stative, adjective, participle. It's an adjectival form, acting this way, but was afraid from the face of mipnei. So panim is going to penei. This is min, penei. So mipnei, excuse me, from the face of, right? Was afraid of is the idea, the presence of Solomon, Shlomo. So Adonijah was afraid of Solomon. Vayakom. So kal, vav, consecutive imperfect, third singular from kum. This is a kametz chatuf. So vayakom, o, from the So it's an o vowel sound. And he arose, vayelech, and he went from halach. So again, same thing that's going on up here. Well, sort of. They got up first and then they went here. He got up and he went. Vayachazek. So this is a nice Hiphil form. We haven't learned these in the imperfect yet, but this, IE vowel here keys you in, and he grasped. So this is a Hiphil, vav, consecutive imperfect, third singular from chazak, vayachazek. This is sort of a clue. It's hindered a little bit because of the chet up here. You might expect the vowel, but it's anyway. Vayachazek, and he grasped the bait here. This is chazak, takes the bait as the object marker. So, and he grasped what? The horns, again, keren. When it goes to the plural, Cotter note, it's going back to its one syllable base. So he grasped the horns of, Cotter note, hamizbeach. So mizbeach, you see zavach here, like to slaughter, to sacrifice. So a mizbeach is an altar. So he grasped the horns of the altar. We won't go into all the details of what that means, but it's essentially a safe place. It's like home base in tag. So I'm trying to think if I don't think I want to go into any more about that. Okay. Sorry, just looking to see if there was something I need to talk about, but I don't think there is. Okay. So Vayugad leShlomo lemor. Hine Adoniyahu yarei et hamelech Shlomo v'hine achaz bekarnot hamizbeach lemor Yishavali chayom hamelech Shlomo im yamit et avdo bacharev. Okay. What does all that mean? If you remember Nagad, we looked at this earlier, like to report, to tell. The Nun assimilates into the Gimel in the Hiphil form. So instead of Hingid, you get Higid. It just goes into the Gimel there. Well, this is a Hiphil form. We haven't learned that yet, but it's like the passive of the Hiphil, Hiphil. So Vayugad, so a Hiphil, Vav consecutive imperfect, third singular from Nagad. So if Nagad in the Hiphil means to tell or report, in the Hiphil it's to be told, to be reported. Right. So, and it was told to Solomon, saying, it was reported to Solomon, saying, maybe right now, or as opposed to earlier, now Adonijah is afraid of Solomon the king. And maybe like at this moment, he has seized, so achaz, just a cow perfect third singular from achaz. He seized, again, the bait marking the object here, the horns of the Mizbeach, the altar, saying, Yishavali chayom hamelech Shlomo. So this is a nifal, imperfect. Actually, it's like a jussive here. Third singular from shava. The nifal of shava means to swear, like swear an oath. So let him swear to me. We'll talk about this, but notice the nun is assimilated into the sheen here because you have a yud, a nun, right? The nun assimilates when you put the yud on. This is just the form that it takes. So like ekatel, tikatel, tikateli, yikatel, tikatel, and so on. This is the nifal imperfect form. This comment's here. So let him swear to me this day. Who's the subject of the jussive form here? The king Solomon. I'll bet there is a note here that does something with this cough. Let's just go. What is this? 51. 51A. Where are you? 51. Yeah. So two manuscripts have Hayom instead of Chayom. So this would make more sense. Yes, this is true. There are certain verbs that will take a specific jussive form. Let me think of one. I can't think of one off the top of my head. But it doesn't have to be jussive in form to be jussive in meaning. In fact, when you look at like Bible Works, which is what I use, as you guys can probably see here, Bible Works will say jussive in form as well as in meaning, or it'll just say not jussive in no particular form of the jussive, but just jussive in meaning. I mean, clearly, I think that's what's going on here. Let him swear to me, the king. Notice what we saw down there with A. Two manuscripts have Hayom, trying to make sense of Ch. So, like, according to the day, like the day. But I think that's why they've changed this to Hayom. But nonetheless. That's the sense of this. Let him today swear to me. And then what? Swear what? Im yamit et avdo b'charev. So, yamit, nice Hiphil form here from mem vav tate. And the im, this is that oath formula here. So if he, the king, will kill, cause to die, right, his servant with the sword, and that we have to sort of think about this. This is the way these oath formulas go. And what's meant here, notice it just stops. If he will kill his servant with a sword, nothing else. They don't write what the curse is, but that's what's going on here. So they're saying essentially, if he will kill his servant with the sword, may, bad things happen to him. May he be accursed, whatever. And actually, Caleb Howard, friend of mine, that went to Hopkins with me. We were in class one day. Can't remember what we were reading. It might have been Ezekiel. Not sure. But he came up with a great translation. I don't know if it's original to him, but I'm assuming that it is. But it stuck. It really stuck in the class. He said, "I'll be damned." Right? I'll be damned. And it looked. It worked out really well. Like, I'll be damned if such and such will happen. Anyway. So let him swear, essentially, let him swear that he will not kill me. 52. Vayomer Shlomo, im yehye leven chayil lo yipal mi sa'arato arza, ve'im ra'at matsevo vamet. All right. So, and Solomon said, if there will be found, if he will have, or he will be a son of valor, right? Very woodenly here. If it turns out he's like a just guy, if I don't find a bunch of evil, stuff in him, if he's examined, if Adonijah is examined and he's found to be an okay guy, lo yipol misa'arato arza. So this is from nafal. So when you put the yud on, the nun assimilates. Yipol, so just a cow, imperfect, third masculine singular from nafal. It will not fall. What? And I suspect there's something going on. So what a sa'ara here is, like a single hair. So his single hair, from his single hair. So this is min, sa'ara. The hey turns into a tav when you put the object suffix on. So from his single hair, literally, but not a single hair will fall arza, to the ground. So eretz. And we have the addition of a directional hey, which causes, of course, can I do this? The tzaddik here to go to a non-final form, and the accent doesn't shift. Oops. And you get arza. So if you remember Genesis 1:1, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. This is one of the things that happens with eretz. It can have this sort of shift to an A. But anyway, this is arza, to the ground, directional hay. So Solomon says, if he is, like, if we find out if he will be, if he is a, honorable man, maybe, a single hair will not fall to the ground. One of his single hairs will not fall to the ground. Maybe not a single hair of his will fall to the ground. That's a good way to say it. Ve'im ra'a timatsevo vamet. Okay. So the opposite. But if evil is found in him, so here is your nifal form, timatse. Notice the hierik, assimilated nun, comets. This is, so it'd be amatse, timatse, timatse, imatse, timatse, nimatse, and so on, is found in him, then he will die, right? Then, as opposed to not a single hair falling to the ground, death awaits him. We're almost done. What time we got? 55. Okay, we can finish this. Okay. Vayishlach hamelech Shlomo vayoriduhu me'al hamizbeach vayavo vayishtachu lamelech Shlomo vayomer lo Shlomo lech. Vayomer lo Shlomo lech levetecha. Ugh. Okay. Pretty nice of him. Vayishlach, so from shalach, very standard, nice looking form here. Kal, vav consecutive imperfect, third singular from shin, lamed chet. So, and he sent, right? Who did? Who's the subject? Hamelech Shlomo, noun in that position. Solomon the king sent. So in King Solomon, maybe just nicely in English, sent. And here we have the verb yarad. So if you remember, I said there are certain verbs in the Hiphil that the first Yud will extend down and become, go back to an original Vav. So the form that we get, well, let me just do it this way. Yorid would be the Hiphil form. So here we have vayorid. It gets more complicated because what's happening is that's not being written. They're not using plenary verbs, plenary forms, and it's an original vayoridu, right, would be the original form. No, it's all spaced out here. Sorry about that. But now they're adding who to the end. So to show you what the object is, and what's happening is this long U vowel is going to a short U vowel, which is very common when you add these suffixes. Ugh, this has gotten very ugly, but that's what's going on here. So a nice, not so nice. Hiphil, vav consecutive imperfect, third plural from yarad with a third masculine singular object suffix, vayoriduhu. So, and they brought down, caused to go down, him, woodenly here. They brought him, Adonijah, down, me'al, from upon. Notice instead of min, al, because the ayin doesn't want to be doubled when you assimilate a nun, you get me'al, compensatory lengthening, from upon hamizbeach. So they brought him down from the altar. Vayavo, and he came. Kal vav consecutive imperfect, third singular from bo. Vayishtachu, I hate these forms, but got to get used to seeing them. So this is a hishtafel form. So hishtafel, Vav, consecutive and perfect. Third singular. If it were a plural, it'd be yishta. Let's say vayishtach. Let's see. Vayishtachuvu. How would it go? Vayishtachavu. I think it's tachavu. Vayishtachavu is what it would be. Can't believe I'm now trying to create a hishtafel form. Vayishtachavu. But anyway, this is vayishtachu, and he worshipped, right? The object is marked here with a lamed. King Solomon, he worshipped King Solomon. So Athnak or Atnachta. So strong pause here. And Solomon said to him, Vayomer lo Shlomo, Lech levetecha, go from halach. So just a cal imperative, masculine singular, from halach, go to your house. Let's break that one down as our last thing here. If you remember, bait is the lexical form here. So if you wanted to say the house of you with an object suffix, then the accent shifts. Techa, the accent shifts to here, and that means that a aye, an aye diphthong here contracts, and you get instead a, so beitecha, but then you add a lamed, and you have a vocal shava here as opposed to a lamed with patach or pathak, whatever, because you can only have one marker of definiteness, and it's already being marked here. So you just have lamed vocal shava, which then causes the bait to spiritize. So you lose the dagesh line here. So levetecha and levetecha, go to your house. So go home. In other words, he's pardoning him, right? And he's saying, I'm not going to have you killed for doing this, which, makes Solomon look really great. So there we are. Let's go back. Okay. That is the end of chapter 1. We finally got there. I know that some of you in the chat, like Cadaver Spider, is obviously very advanced in his Hebrew. And so, I'm not going to be able to answer all the questions, I think, and keep this in a balanced way, or there are just certain questions I don't know off the top of my head. But hopefully this has been useful to everybody and enjoyable. And next Sunday, we will pick up again at 12. I'm trying to keep these to an hour. So 30 minutes of grammar, 30 minutes of reading, and that's been working out reasonably well. So again, thank you all very much for coming. This has been, enjoyable for me, and hopefully it's been useful for you. So until next time, resist poor scholarship. Always ask, how do you know that?